So, hello and welcome to Musalog Woman, a sister publication of musalog.com. And today we have special guests, Bahati and Ahmondylla Best.
Good
Hello.
Good morning.
morning.
So, today we're going to talk to this beautiful couple that I just adore and love so much. We're going to talk to them about their film, The Patterson, Another Bronx Tale. It's produced and filmed by Brother Best, as well as the Global Heritage Theater Arts Project and the Harlem Film Company. So, to begin, um, this is a very interesting story to me because I think that I came in probably the next era after the next generation after when you highlight the before of the Patterson Project in the Bronx.
Mhm.
So my and I'm from Philadelphia, but we know that the housing project community was a lot different back then.
Mhm.
Was everybody was love and everybody's full of community and let's take care of each other and all of these things. So and we see something very, very different today. So I'm very interested to discuss the film with you, and the journey of creating the film, as well as what you would like people to carry away from this. So first of all, if you would both introduce yourselves, and then we can talk about the the film itself, when you started it.
All right. Well, I'm Bahati Adrian Best. Born in the Bronx, raised up in the Patterson projects, and our family, the Best family, moved into the Patterson in 1950, just
Wow.
after it was constructed. As a matter of fact, the building we moved into on off of 143rd Street, that street wasn't even finished when we moved into the projects.
Wow.
So it was brand new.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was that? And Ahmondylla, did you also grow up there?
I didn't grow up in the Patterson, no, but I grew up when I was an infant in the projects on 125th Street in Manhattan.
Hmm.
Then I was raised from maybe the second grade to the fourth grade at the South Jamaica housing in Queens.
Hmm.
And same thing, when we moved in, they were still constructing the building.
Wow. So what was that? uh, Let me ask you, Brother Best, what was, if you don't mind me asking this candid question, what was your family housing situation like before your family moved into the Patterson? Did you live in a house? Did you live in?
We lived in a facility called the Huts. My father was in the army.
Okay.
He was in the 369th, which was called the Harlem Hellfighters during World War
Wow.
II. So me and my mother lived in a housing complex called the Huts. And for people who are not familiar with the Huts, the best way I can describe it is if you took a beer or soda can and cut it in half, and then placed a half of it on the ground. That's what the building was like. It was kind of shaped round with a flat bottom. Um, I was when we were living there. I was maybe three. I remember I was 3, 4 years old at the time, and it was up in the northern part of the Bronx,
Wow.
and that's where we lived until they opened up the new Patterson housing in the Bronx. And I think Patterson was one of the first housing projects built in New York City.
Now, how great of a dynamic or change did you experience from moving from the huts to this housing project?
Oh, it was huge. The huts were kind of cramped.
Mm.
It was barely enough room for the three of us. But then when we moved to the Patterson, it was clean. It was brand new. You know, it had that clean smell and air to it. The
Mm-hmm.
grass was fresh. As a matter of fact, if you walked on the grass, you got a $5 fine, and back then $5 was a lot of money. So a lot of people in the neighborhood were always don't walk on the grass. You know, especially my mother. Like she didn't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like don't walk on the grass.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and we had at the time Zambonis, and Zambonis are huge cleaning machines that are driven. They usually use them in ice skating rinks.
Mm-hmm.
But we had them in the neighborhood cleaning the walkways, the sidewalks at that time.
Wow.
You
And
know,
were they owned by the city?
it was owned by the city. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
You know, so everything was clean. It was neat. We had a small play area. You know, we had monkey bars and uh, what is it? The seesaws. You know,
Mm.
it was really nice. You know, people used to air. I know my mother used to air her sheets and whatnot in the window. You know, so you get
Mm-hmm.
that fresh air smell. You
Mm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody was it was a real community. You know, I used to go upstairs to my friend's house to play. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I used to run outside and play. It was great. It was terrific.
So the that's pretty amazing considering when I was uh maybe in my 20s, I stayed in a housing project with my cousin, and it was definitely not that. I suspect that the ones that were created in Philadelphia were probably, it was probably the same experience when they were first erected. So um, it's very interesting to hear how pleasant you speak of it. So, um, how diverse was it?
Very. We had Italians living there. We had a store across the street from us called the Little Store.
Mm-hmm.
It was run by a guy named Tony, who was
Mm-hmm.
Italian. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get everything there. You know, cigarette candies and you know canned goods, frozen goods. You know, it was cool. We had a chicken coop across the street from the building where
What?
you get fresh eggs. You know,
What?
and fresh chicken. You know, the guy you'd ask for chicken, and the guy would kill the chicken right there for you. You know, and you'd walk out with a fresh chicken. Next door to him was Mr. Avery's barbershop. You know, he used to cut my hair.
Mm.
Um, and I used to go to school with his son. And Mr. Avery was a brother, you know, and he owned the shop, you know, along with Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Johnson, who my friend Abraham's father, who owned his barbershop on the other side of the projects.
Wow.
Um, So, you know, we had that. Then there was a butcher shop. I mean, and they were all like blacks, Italians, Hispanics, you know, everybody was there.
Wow. So take me back to that first experience. And Ahmondylla, I'd like for you to tell me your experience of the public housing that you lived in as well. But tell me what you remember, Brother Best, about your first experience walking into the unit with your family.
Well, first we lived on 143rd Street in a building 314, which was just enough for the three of us. Then, after my brother Tony was born, my mother put a request. Well, my parents rather put in a request for a larger facility, so we moved across the street to what we call the other side,
Mm.
and into 414. which is on 144th Street, which meant that we had 3 bedrooms, a huge living room, a nice sized kitchen. It was a lot more roomy. So it turned out me and there were 4 boys in the family. I was the oldest, and my 3 younger brothers. And my father worked for the Transit Authority. He was a conductor, and my mother stayed home and took care of us, and it was cool.
Wow. So that it's quite a different dynamic, like I said, than what you experience now. And Ahmondylla, Queen Best, what was your experience when your family moved into the public housing unit back then?
It was very similar, although we lived in a very small house in Queens. It was maybe a 3-bedroom house. The floors were falling apart. And when we got the opportunity, and this was after moving from 125th Street in Manhattan housing projects.
Okay.
Moved from there into a small house because my grandmother lived next door to that house. And we got the opportunity to get a brand new, fresh place to live. And it was pretty much the same experience. We didn't really look at it as the prison that people might look at it today, even though the structure is exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? Like the walls were concrete and the windows were metal lined and everything like that. But we saw it as a fresh start. We also had a diverse population living there. Italians, Jewish, everybody was there because we were all in the same income level. And that's pretty much what it was based on back then.
The same perceived income level, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Because we know about a lot of certain people who took advantage of what was supposed to be the give back for us. Listening to both of your stories, I can just imagine, being a child walking in and seeing. I remember when my grandmother, they moved from a very small. I'm the oldest of the grandchildren. And I remember when they moved into this very big, giant house in what we call Winfield, which is far west Philadelphia. And I remember what it was like, going from this small, cramped area and going into this, this big house. So it's kind of as a child, when you go from what you see as super struggle to a bit of freedom, there's something that's jubilous about it. It makes you feel healthier. So tell me about some of your neighbors. What do you remember about your neighbors?
Well, the beautiful thing about then was that, first of all, most of the families, if not all, were 2-parent family homes. I had friends whose fathers were IRS agents, or a lot of police officers, like my uncles. I had 2 uncles that were police officers, and they didn't have it easy getting into the police department either. But they're in the precinct in the Bronx. Like I was saying, barbershop owners. These are professional people. And we all used to leave our doors open during the summertime. You'd see people coming down the stairs, and they would peek and say, "Hello, Miss Bess," or whatever. It was great. We all played basketball together. We got some great basketball players. As a matter of fact, the Harlem Globetrotters scouts used to come to our neighborhood looking for talent.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we had some really, really good ball players. Kareem used to come and play in the Patterson.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Tiny Archibald, well, we were real tight because we were on the 2nd floor. Tiny's family was on the 3rd floor. I and his sister Vicky, we were in the same class in elementary school, you know. So we
Uh-huh.
all grew up together. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Nathan Dukes, who lived down on the first floor, on every Saturday, you'd hear the piano going, you know, and aside from being a great ball player himself, he was a great pianist. And when we were in junior high school together, we were in the junior high school band from 7th to 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we were tight. You know, not everybody knew each other that way because there were groups. You know, there were some people who had their guys who they would hang together with. You know, that were tighter than others. But we all knew each other. We all respect each other. We all played together. We all went to the after school center together, which was open daily. You know, and sometimes on weekends. And we were able to play pool. As a matter of fact, you know, going back even further, Will Chamberlain used to come and play at our after school center at our elementary school, which was PS18.
Mm.
We had a great gym, and that gym is still in great shape. But
Wow.
yeah, because I went there a couple of years ago and I took some pictures of it. It's gorgeous.
Wow.
You know, as well as the interior of the school. So they kept in really, really good condition.
So that, you know, that is a testament to what can happen, or what kind of success we can achieve if our government leaders focus in on recreation and making sure that we have arts programs and things like that, and that we have attention paid to our public housing or our low income housing, to when to keep the morale, because I hear all this happiness in your voice speaking about your experiences, and it's absolutely beautiful. What's happening now, with the gentrification and a lot of destruction of projects, and the housing developments, and the housing and urban development itself is a lot different. I think that, there's been a lot of back steps. So and so that's why I think that this documentary is so important, because if we don't reflect back, we don't have to walk back there, but if we don't know where we came from, we're not going to know where we're going, and we're not going to be able to improve our condition.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I'm excited about this, but I do want to talk about I do want to ask you, this was 1950. So was there any racial tension at all that you experienced in your neighborhood or in your school, or what I mean, in that community?
Not that I was aware of.
Mm.
No, I know that
Interesting.
I had a good friend, Frank Brea, who I still stay in touch with. Frank's Italian,
Mhm.
and Frank told me that they moved out of the Patterson when he went to Bronx Science. He went
That's
to
the
Bronx.
school.
Yeah, he went to Bronx Science High School, which is a school he had to take a test for, and they were very limited in terms of students that they could take in, and
Okay.
also very well. From what I understand, there was a quota that they exercised. But Frank told me when he started going to Bronx Science that they had moved out of the Patterson and gone to the Pelham area to live, and they had lived in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
So they were able to buy a house and get out of the projects. Um, but it's not like they didn't like the people who were there, because, like I said, we all played ball together. We all went to school together. As a matter of fact, there's a piece in the documentary where Frank talks about how he was the political machine behind his brother Ray Hodge, and we were all like very close friends. But Ray was running for class president, and 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 Frank was his political advisor.
Oh goodness. Wow. That is cute. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. I
So,
like
you
that.
know, but Frank's family moved out. And I used to tell Ahmondylla when we first had kids that Mrs. Braille was my model for how to parent, because
Mm.
Braille was always there at school whenever Frank needed something, you know,
Mm-hmm.
needed an extra boost, or if there was a problem with his grades, whatever, Mrs. Braille was like there, you know. So, you know, I always had her in the back of my mind when it came to parenting.
Mm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful that this is another thing that I think that we're missing in all of our communities are those solid examples of parenting, how you should do it, community, how you should do it, unity, how you should do it, and why, division is so detrimental, you know? So go ahead.
So I wanted to say that the operative word that Bahati said was not that we were aware of. I think our parents kind of made sure that the troubles of adults didn't really touch us in the same way it touched them. Of course, there was racial strife in the country in the 50s, segregation. You know, we were products of segregation in that time. So, but our parents made sure that we weren't involved in it
Mm.
the way they were. You know, they had to fight for this and fight for that. But we really didn't know much about that.
Mm.
Yeah, I figured with all, you know, the friends that I had, you know, that didn't exist. You know, at least not amongst the kids.
Right. So we don't know whether that was good or bad, you know, but that's the way it was at that time.
Although I have to say that, you know, there was the end of our street. Our Patterson projects was a complex that spanned from 138th Street and Morris Avenue to 149th Street in Morris
Wow,
Avenue.
that's a lot.
Yeah,
There are no short blocks in the Bronx.
right, right. Which included
Wow.
the elementary school PSAT.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but if you go across 149th Street, you went into the Italian section.
Mm.
Right. It was
And the
segregation.
and the Italian section, well, but it was that way because they had established that from, you know, their immigration from years before. So you go into the Italian section because that's where we used to buy our Italian sandwiches, which were really good. You know, I mean,
Mm.
what hoagies were to Philly, Italian sandwiches were to the Bronx.
Still
Okay,
Italian.
yeah, but some guys said that they were chased out of that neighborhood by the Italians because they didn't want us there.
Mhm.
Now, personally, I can't say that happened to me,
Mhm.
because I'd go get this sandwich and I'd very nicely walk away. You know, I
Mhm.
never had that experience, but
Mhm.
some of the other guys did. So, you
Yeah.
know, if you want to talk about, I don't know, being segregated or not being wanted, maybe that would be an example of that. But that wasn't my experience.
I think what's important to note also is, well, while you didn't experience it, it did happen. However, what what was going on and what I'm hearing is protection of our children, protection of our youth. It wasn't,
Mhm.
and it was similar for me. You weren't just told go outside and play somewhere, and like you were playing on the block, and if your mother couldn't hear, if you couldn't hear your mother's voice, she might come out there looking for you, or
Yeah,
you know what I mean, or if she has to call up the block and see, okay, have you seen my daughter, there's trouble. If the
yeah,
if the lights come on and you don't check in,
yes,
there's
Exactly.
trouble.
Yeah.
So now there's a different dynamic. I'm disturbed when I see children as young as 4 and 5 years old running around by themselves, especially today, but running around by themselves and there's no adult in sight.
Hmm.
That's, and I like to point these things out because I think that it's so important to look at how the communities thrived in that generation and where we're missing the mark. I do want to mention my mother attended Bartram High School, and she lived in Southwest Philly when she was younger, and she's told me stories about how they were chased home, but they were chased home. It wasn't one child. They all grouped together
Hmm.
to protect each other, especially the smaller children, and they had the sense of unity and community was there.
Yeah.
Even if it was that we had our community was segregated, it's still there. We took care of each other. We looked out
Mm.
for each other. We looked out for each other's children. So these are the things I feel that it's so great that you've created this type of documentary so that we can take a look at, it can work. It can work if we improve our emotional condition and our community condition. If we start to look at each other as, hey, I belong to you, so therefore I'm responsible for you and you're responsible for me. I think that we can possibly, at least inch back a little bit to these pleasant stories that you're telling me
I just
about.
want to say that
So,
I think that type of thing still goes on today, but we don't hear about it because the media likes to emphasize more negative to sell papers than positive. You don't hear about all the people taking care of each other in these housing complexes today.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just hear about the ones who are making the news, by doing whatever it is they do.
And
So,
I'd love to invite our I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you.
yeah, that's okay. I just want to say, I just want to make that point because there are a lot of really, really good people today organizing, doing good things, trying to keep their buildings together. Like in our documentary, you'll see someone named Miss Pat talking about. She's the head of the organization, and then you'll see someone named Marissa, young woman,
Clarissa.
Clarissa, sorry, who is organizing people and keeping people together. They don't
And
always make the news.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that how women step up. I think it's I think we're reaching an era where women are saying, look, y'all tried, and you didn't do too well, so it's time for us to take over. And I'm saying yes.
Mother Ya Asantewa was a fierce Ashanti fighter who, when the Ashantis were greeted with British uh, under British attack, she was looking at the men and she's like, what y'all gonna do? Oh,
Yeah.
y'all ain't gonna do nothing? So, okay, ladies, come on, let's take up your spears. I don't know what these brothers doing, but we
Yeah.
getting ready to get at it. So yeah, they're not to discount the brothers at all. You know what I mean? Not at all, because we need you. Especially when we need that.
Mhm.
But we definitely need you. But yes, a lot of times, and that's a maternal instinct as well. That's a maternal instinct as well.
Yeah.
And
Mhm. I think by women doing that, and they make brothers take a look at themselves and ask, what are we doing? What happened?
mm,
You know.
mm, mm,
So I cheer that on.
that's good. I think that it's very important that we have a balanced dynamic when it comes to relationship with each other. It's very important that even though we can look at, hey, the women are doing this and doing that, just like you said, the hope is that the brothers will, something will wake up in the brothers and they'll say, hey, and we have seen a lot of brothers stepping up,
Oh yeah,
especially this
Mhm.
year. There's a
Yeah.
lot of brothers stepping up. They stepping up, going to the schools. They stepping up, protecting the women more, speaking out to protect us. So I just want to note that. But not to veer too far off topic, I want to okay. So I'd like for both of you, for the sake of the Patterson project's experience, I'll ask Brother Bahati first, but then I'm going to ask you also, Ahmondylla, of your most treasured, what you would think would be your most treasured and intimate experience living at the Patterson projects or the other project where you are.
Well, there's not one. There are a couple. Because in Patterson, for me, it was a great social climate. Um, Going to the parties, our house parties were great. You know, people would have birthday parties, whatever, or what we used to call sets. You know, set. Or a rent party. And we were dancing. It was the music, the camaraderie. You got to know, everybody in the neighborhood that way. That was one thing. Then going to the after school center and to the park, playing basketball and softball. You know, just playing the athletic competition. It was both friendly and really, really competitive. Uh, I was on a softball team called Patterson Knights. We played all over in Bronx. Academically, we were also competitive on an academic scale. We compare test results. Some people who would fail the test were embarrassed. And would get kind of jokingly ridiculed.
Mm-hmm.
Study. You know, it's partially the reason why we kind of all like there are a few guys, some Danny Georges comes to mind, Frank Rayo, Ray Hodge. These guys were not only great athletes but great students who went on to become true professionals. Later on in life, which is what the Patterson actually started off to be, because I was going to make a film on the people who came out of the projects who were successes. That was the focus in the beginning. But it had just expanded from there as I talked to a lot of my former classmates and Patterson residents about what I was doing. They said, well, you can't leave out certain things. You have to consider this, and you please show that, because this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it went from talking about successes out of the Patterson to what happened in the Patterson, and what brought the Patterson living situation to the point that it is today.
Well, for me, as I said, I really didn't spend my teenage years in the projects or the low-income housing situation. But I do remember the family feel. As you said, we spent most of our time downstairs playing, with our friends.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we woke up, we ate breakfast and we went downstairs and went outside. We stayed outside all day, except to come out to eat, and when we weren't in school. And I remember just being with the friends that we had, running around, the typical American things, the seasonal games we played, skating, yo-yos would come out in the spring, hula hoops, everything that everybody else in America was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Those things stuck in, and we all got our brand new hula hoops, during that season.
Yeah.
And we would all practice doing the hula hoop. Or we had our skates, and we would do the skate key, the metal skates you put on your shoe. We would skate for that season. It seemed to come in seasons.
That's right.
Yo-yos would come out in the spring. Everybody got a yo-yo.
Mm-hmm.
We learned how
Dunkin'
to
yo-yos.
do the Dunkin' yo-yo. We learned how to make it sleep, walk the dog.
Yeah.
We were adept
Mine
at
was Rock the Baby.
rocket the baby. So those are the things that stick out in my mind since you asked that. And the fact that family, our personal blood family, would always come over.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them lived in housing projects in other boroughs, but they would always come over. We would go over there. I mean, it was always positive. We saw very little crime.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And if we did, again, it was kept from us. We heard about it. Because me with the South Jamaica projects, they were the gangs that started there. But we
that wasn't until later on, though.
That wasn't until later on, right?
Yeah.
But Frankie Lyman and the teenagers were in the South Jamaica projects.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Things like that. You know what I'm
They
saying?
used to come by to the Patterson, too, because their manager lived up the hill from us.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Them and Little Anthony and Imperials. Anthony used to come around and their manager, who we actually auditioned for there. We used to have a little singing group in Patterson. And we actually auditioned for him because he lived next door to a friend of ours named Bay Switzer, who was on the Patterson, on the Grand Concourse. And Bay used to come down to the Patterson, and 4 of us used to back him up while he sang lead.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, we knew that. But I can't leave out Latin music. Latin music was the heart and soul of our neighborhood. Wow. You could not go to a party unless they call it salsa later on and now, but we called it Latin. And if you couldn't Latin, you couldn't go to the party. And Ahmondylla, which another impetus for doing the Patterson was one year we had a Patterson. We had reunions every year. So one year we had a reunion, and these are like big dances, and we played, Motown stuff and whatever the music was of the day. But when Latin music was played, everybody got up, and she marveled at the fact that everybody got up and just started dancing to Latin music, doing salsa,
which was one reason why I kind of urged him to do a documentary specifically about the Patterson, because for me, that area was unique. In the people, they stayed together. They still knew each other after 40 and 50 years. I can't say I know any of the people from the projects I grew up in. Maybe some of the people do, and they're still close. They keep in contact with each other. They care about each other. So when we started, quote unquote, dating and all.
Yeah, she came down to the projects on occasion. Yeah.
And he would introduce me to his friends, and they all still were close.
Wow.
And that was amazing to me. I don't know if that's unique to the Patterson. I thought it was. So over the years, I would say, wow, people need to know about this. So eventually the documentary came together. And I'd just like to mention before we leave that Cheryl Hill, who is one of the founders of the Harlem Film Company, put the film together with Christian. Can't remember his last name right now, but
he's the editor.
The editor, and they made that footage come to life. I just have to mention that.
Christian did a dynamite job.
It was amazing. Christian Ramirez and Cheryl Hill.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But I wanted to add too that the Patterson, and I think you alluded to this earlier, the Patterson wasn't the only project that was like that during that time. My cousins lived at the St. Nicholas projects, and I had other cousins who lived at Bronx River projects, and there was the Melrose. They were all the same way. There was one Easter when I walked from the Patterson on 144th Street to 131st Street and St. Nicholas Avenue, which was like in Harlem. You had to walk across the bridge and further downtown to get there. I walked all the way. There was no problem. Past the Lincoln projects, there was a projects where Kareem lived,
Wow.
It was all the same. It was cool.
Wow. So before we skip along, you mentioned a rent party. What the heck was that?
Oh yeah.
Well, some other people are trying to raise money for rent.
Mm.
So you pay 50 cents to get in.
Wow.
And you would buy your meal. The people would serve meals, and you'd buy it, and the money that they collected at the door went to paying that person's rent that month.
Mrs. Johnson, who lived next door to us, she made the best chicken dinners for $1.25.
Mm.
Oh man!
Wow.
Serious.
Wow.
But
I'm hungry just thinking about it.
another important thing to mention, in my opinion, is the fact that moving into the low-income housing projects was just supposed to be a jump-off point so you could save money to move out. You weren't supposed to live there for the rest of your life. But because of redlining and the insinuation of really, really, really more blatant racism, people couldn't save their money and they couldn't move out. They weren't welcome in other neighborhoods where houses were being built, the so-called suburbs. So we had to stay there.
Yeah, I used to ask my father about that because there would be commercials on TV about, buy a house for $750 down, And even then, I didn't think that was a whole lot of money. And I was a kid. But I was like, well, why can't we do that? And there were reasons beyond my comprehension at that time that we couldn't. Now, I think Frank's family was able to take advantage of it, which is why they moved out of the Patterson. But most of the other people who were there in the Patterson, and like I said, these people had good jobs. There had to have been a good reason for them not to be able to move out, and it wasn't for lack of interest.
You both segued into that was my next question. What was there an urgency to get out of the projects? Things. Did you see that there were a lot of generations being passed down, like staying in the same unit?
Oh.
You have the parents, and then, the children would stay, and then, because that's something that I've seen. I've actually seen that. There's actually leases passed down to the next generation. I've seen that happen. So I was just curious.
No, I didn't see a lot of that in the project. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of people a lot of the parents that I know stayed in their apartments until they died. But their children had already moved on.
Okay.
So a lot of, say, my peers, they're gone. They moved out. The generation behind me, I'd say for the most part, because my youngest brother is 7 years younger than me, and even his generation moved out. So I didn't see a lot of that.
And we moved out. Fortunately, my grandmother had a house in Queens. I have to go back and find out how she did all this, but she's the one who always had the houses. So we, after maybe 4 years, bought my grandmother's house, and she moved on to another house. So we were able to buy her house and get out of the projects. And that's, I think, what the plan was by the city, for people to be able to do that. Fortunately, we were able to do that.
Yeah, what I did experience, and it happened to my family too, was there was a lot of separations. Because the husbands would, for whatever reasons, get separated from the family. So there was quite a bit of that. Not everybody, but quite a bit. The reasons for the separations are only known by those families. But I know there are quite a few men who, for example, became alcoholics, and the wives couldn't deal with that anymore, so they had to
I
go.
mean, it's beautiful to highlight what's going on, what was going on from your childhood point of view, but there were very real situations that parents and families were dealing with at the time. And again, it is to be admired that the protection that you experienced, I think is unique. Now it's kind of, you're on your own. Like as soon as you're 4 years old, you could do that on your own. It's a
Hmm.
lot of, and I understand it on one hand, because you have to kind of have, as people of color, we have to have an independence that other families don't have to have. So I do understand it, but it's unfortunate that we have to impose that type of independence on children, before they're actually matured and ready,
Hmm.
or we're
Yeah,
actually maturing them beyond what they're ready for. So I admire the fact that there were certain things you just didn't see, and there's certain things too, like you didn't sass your mother, or you didn't, do all this talking back and what do you want and all of that stuff, because you'd be picking up your mouth off the floor.
yeah.
So um the I think it's very important that when we talk about these types of things, and when I have the opportunity to ask those who have walked the walk, what can we do different, so
Mhm.
because you had different experiences, you had more pleasant experiences, how can we get back to it? How many years did you live in the Patterson?
Oh, I lived. Let me see. Well, I got out. I joined the Air Force in 1966.
So you didn't, so it was like what, 16 years,
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I through high school, you know, and then when I graduated high school, I wanted to join the Air Force because I wanted to get out of there and experience the world. You
Mhm.
know, I wasn't going to college. I was told that I wasn't college material
By the teachers or by your parents?
by the teachers. That my grades really weren't good enough. You know, and I went to a trade school. My high school was a trade school, so they were gearing me toward going into electrical wiring or motor control or whatever, and I didn't see myself doing that.
Mm.
So I thought that there were I felt that I was destined for something else. So I had to explore. And in
Mhm.
order for me to explore, I wanted to be out from under my mother's wing. Um, so she talked to me before I decided to join because I was going to join right out of high school.
Mhm.
And she talked me into staying out for a year and working before I made up my mind to do that. So I did, and I
Mhm.
worked out in the village for a year at an import-export company,
Mhm.
which was really good. It was a very, very good experience. I got to know some really, really good people. And when I told the president of the company what I decided to do, um, he tried to talk me into being representative of the company while I was in the Air Force, which was really and that was an interesting conversation
Mm. Especially for
because
someone that was told that he wasn't even good enough for college. Hmm.
yeah, because what he told me was, well, he said, look, we can put you through school. We can make sure you can get it an assignment in Japan,
Mm.
and you can be our company representative. And it kind of scared me because this during the time it was around the James Bond kind of era. so so if you can picture it, I'm in the president's office. It's kind of, you know, the only light was from his office, and he was kind of leading into it. And this guy was a German Jew. Come to find out from his secretary that he and the vice president, who was his brother, were in the SS during World War II,
Oh my goodness.
which was the European Secret Service,
Mm-hmm.
and he had connections.
Oh boy.
So that scared me, and I said, "Well, thank you very much, but I don't think so." But anyway,
Like, you're not gonna catch me up, huh?
no. But I have to admit, it was an interesting offer.
Mm.
And had I been a little bit more mature, I might have like given it some thought, because it was. See, there are ways that some people have of making money and having a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was educated otherwise, growing up, it might have been something for me to take advantage of. I find that as an adult and interacting with in wider circles, that people grow up very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so different bits of information come your way, and you find out that people are connected in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that assists them in climbing the ladder.
Mm-hmm. And also making decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's
Mhm.
interesting. That's really interesting that that you had that experience. I wonder, do you think that you would have felt that way had you not had the kind of sheltered life that you had at the Patterson? Like, do you think that if you knew more about what was going on in the world other than what you saw on TV, that you would be more inclined to have taken that offer?
It would have made me make a more informed decision.
Hmm. Understood. Understood. So, wow, that's amazing. I love listening to these stories. In closing, and this has been absolutely enjoyable talking about this documentary. Um, Before we kind of close out, tell me about the experience that you had with gathering the people and trying to get the interviews and everything. Did you find it challenging, or were people very receptive?
It was wonderfully challenging.
Mm.
It was wonderfully challenging. Oh, I can't tell you. All right. I'm going to try not to take up too much time because you come to the end. But
No, it's just fine. It's just fine. Like I said, we'll separate it into segments. It's fine.
okay, when I got out of the war and came back home,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know where everybody was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I started exploring. Later on, I had gotten into film school. Channel 13 had a film and television training school that I had gotten into. It was started by a gentleman named Bill Grease in Black Journal.
Mm-hmm.
It was first it was the Black Journal film and television training school, then it became Channel 13.
Mm-hmm.
So I had taken a class there. It was almost a year long. I freelanced in film for a long time. Then I got my job at ABC as a cameraman. At that time, some friends of mine, Nathan Dukes, and Arnold Melrose, and there was one other brother. They knew that I was into filmmaking. I'd done some documentaries with other people, and I had the job at ABC. We had a meeting. Bubba said, we call him Bubba Dukes. Bubba said, look, man, you should make a documentary on the Patterson. And I'm like, really? He said, yeah, man, because you know how we grew up, blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, look, how are we going to do that? All right. And who's got the money? I don't know, man, but, we got to make. I said, well, look, you can't do anything without having the money, and you got to have a focus. What story are we going to tell? Because there are a lot of stories. I don't know, but that's what you do, man. That's what. And I'm like, well, look, okay, fine. I tell you what, I got a friend. I know somebody over at HBO. We can talk to her. We went through some changes. Years went by. Nothing came of it. I started traveling for ABC Sports. people would ask me where I was from, and I would tell them I'm from the Bronx, and they would say, the South Bronx? Yeah. Wasn't it dangerous? No, not particularly. Yeah. Wow, man, you must really be. So that went on for a number of years. So, I came home one day. I came to Ahmondylla. I said, you know what? Given all of that, plus, the experience, which really stood out for me of which he was saying about Latin music and how we all partied together. I said, something, I'm just going to start doing something, start shooting. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to do. I called my friend Bubba one more time and I said, look, you got money for this? Because the idea never left him. Said, I don't know, man, but that's what you do. You do that, So anyway, I said, look, you know what? I don't have any money to pay anybody. It's just going to be me and you. So why don't we just start interviewing some people? I'll try to call some people because I haven't heard from a lot of people in a very long time. And I'm really curious as to where they're at. What's happening? How are you doing? Remember when? And that's kind of how it got started.
So what year do you think around that it was that Bubba asked you, and then until you got started?
It was in the mid 90s. I think it was 97. I started shooting 2005.
Wow.
And it was just the two of us. We, lugged all the equipment everywhere around. I did the interviews.
Yeah, I wrote the questions, gave her the questions. We'd sit down and, she'd ask people. I did everything else. And we went to the reunions, shot stuff at the reunions. I got familiar with new people that I didn't know existed, interviewed them, and it just went on until about 2019. I think it was 2019 when I found the Harlem Film Company in Cheryl.
Right. Because we had stopped doing anything for maybe 4 years.
Yeah, because I couldn't find an editor.
And the people kept asking, when are you going to finish the film? We want to see it. When are you going to finish the film? And then, unfortunately, some people, transitioned.
Yeah, some people died.
So we had to say, well, we better get this out before anybody transitions.
Including Bill Dixon, who was...
Mr. Dixon.
Right.
I don't know if you know Bill Dixon, but Bill Dixon was a jazz trumpet player. Okay. He played Archie Shepp and a bunch of other people. Miles Davis used to come to the neighborhood to rehearse with him.
Wow. Wow.
Dixon, I got to know, and I was friends with his son Bobby growing up.
Wow.
So Mr. Dixon and I wanted him to see it, but he had transitioned.
And everybody was very cooperative and eager to answer the questions and talk about it.
Yeah, everybody wanted to tell people how we grew up and how we had it. Not unlike the way I described to you.
Right. So now that leads me to talk about the fact that, you all are in negotiations with the film to have it published, and you're seeking sponsorship, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we had talked about self-distributing and some other things, but we're trying to find sponsor. Okay. Which is and we're trying to organize viewing showings or whatever screenings. Yeah. So and that's going to take money. So we need sponsorship. We need to raise some money in order to facilitate all that.
Okay.
But it is finished.
Excellent, and it is excellent. Very professional. I mean, it's beautiful. I definitely. I mean, not because I'm biased, because I love this couple so much, but I love the film so much that it's Netflix worthy to me. It's a glimpse into the Bronx, another Bronx tale. I love that. That's very clever. Musilog Woman and Musilog would, definitely love to be able to get the word out about the Patterson, Another Bronx Tale documentary. And I am so, so grateful to you both for creating the film, because what people forget is to document our history. It's very important. It's very important that we document, especially histories that are important to us and that remind us of how good we are.
Yeah.
And what you're telling me about the Patterson, I wish that I was part of that, and
You had a good time.
yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. And there's so many negative stories told about our people. We have to talk about our sufferings, but when we have an opportunity to talk about our joys, this is where we can do it with such documentaries. I'd like to thank you both. Um, Please give me some information that you feel people can contact you. I'm hoping that people respond to this video once it is posted, once it's edited and posted, that we get some responses that you can respond to. But in the meantime, is there a way that they can contact you if they have questions or if they have comments, or how can sponsors reach out to you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook. It's also we're creating a Patterson documentary website, but yeah, you can contact Bahati Best on Facebook.
Is there an email possibly that they can reach you?
Yes, Habari47 at AOL.com.
Okay, can you spell it out for me, please?
HAB as in brother ARI 47 at AOL.com. Yes,
AOL. That's an old email.
yes.
If it ain't
Unfortunately,
broke, why fix it?
yeah,
It's okay. It's all right. Listen, if it still works, it still works. But, you remember back in the day, me, me, me. That's the
yeah.
sound that you heard.
Listen, I own up to my age, all right?
And it's beautiful. I don't want to go broadcasting the fact that I found out, how old the two of you were, and I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like, they can't be that old. Like, it just can't be. You're old enough to be my parents. You just don't, having sat with you, having had conversations with you, you're both vibrant and beautiful, and I so much appreciate you being with us here today. I so appreciate the work that you put into this project, and I am hopeful, and I believe, and speaking to the universe, that this project will definitely take off very soon.
Thank
It's
you.
very needed. This story is very needed because it warmed my heart. So I'm sure it's going to warm others. Thank you so much for sharing your intimate experiences as well.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so we're going to sign off now. And thank you for having Brother Bahati and Sister Ahmondylla Best to discuss the Patterson, Another Bronx Tale. Thank you.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.